you for being here. I appreciate it. It's early in the morning for Sunday, okay? So I appreciate your interest in this topic, and I hope you can get something out of this, huh? At least some change in mind, or your mind gets broadened, some more insight, okay? So let me introduce my organization and myself first. I'm from the Catholic Theology Network. I'll introduce more later. I'm Chandra Nugraha. I'm Dr. Chandra Nugraha. I'm a scientist by profession and by training. I'm also certified in sustainability and climate risk by GARP. This is the same organization that certifies FRM, financial risk management. And I've been an exco of the Catholic Theology Network for some years now. And I'd like to present a topic that is becoming a trend these days. We have recently just had, a few weeks ago, the conference, climate conference, Singapore, organized by St. Ignatius and Caritas. And I think it's good that the pace is going up in this issue. And I hope now, with this presentation, it can help you gain more understanding. Okay? So, I think that's it. So I'm laying my cards early now, okay? So if you see here, there are 4 points I'd like to say today. One is climate change as human cause is undisputed. That's number one, and I will explain more. Second is, unfortunately, the prognosis is quite bad, okay? We have to acknowledge it. We might need to panic a little bit, but we must not despair, okay? And then also, and this is something that is rarely mentioned in many climate-related events and talks, is that there are grave injustices. Huh? Some of them are very obvious, some of them subtly so. And at the end, I will show something that the Pope has mentioned before, that there is something beyond a mere technocratic solutions that the world is offering right now. We've just had the COP26 recently, okay? And I think it'll be better that Christians actually share their worldview and their spirit with the rest of the world. So I hope this small gathering here can be like a spark of fire. Okay? I hope at least in our hearts first, and then in our minds and in our actions. Okay? So, we've heard quite a number of news this year, actually, surrounding climate emergencies, they call it, climate crisis. Now more and more headlines around the world around this topic. So for example here, this is a flood in China. It's a rare event. So they describe it, according to their own words, their own weather station, as once in 1,000 years occurrence. So this is pretty bad, okay? 300 people died, okay? And not only in China, we also have in Europe recently, also in Germany, okay? The level of rainfall that we saw within a matter of 1 to 2 days was beyond what many of them have ever recorded. So it's off the charts, basically. This is both in July, 120 people died. In Canada, there was a heat dome. In the same month, 1 billion, more than 1 billion marine animals died. And then in Greece, we have the PM of Greece, the greatest ecological disaster in decades. This forest fire, the Mediterranean wildfire, more than 10,000 fled in Turkey alone. And then Putin, okay, says it's absolutely unprecedented. This is the wildfire in Siberia. And there are many more actually after this. So you see, these are all only in a span of July, August. Of course, recently there's also the Madagascar famine, which initially it was attributed to climate change, but then later on they said, oh no, it's actually not because of climate change, it's more due to poverty. Anyway, this is within this year alone. So we are seeing unprecedented climate events that are difficult to pin down. Okay? Why? Because unlike other unlike other events, climate-related events are not exactly certain in a way. What caused this? Is it because of climate change? Is it because of other things? And I will show you why, and why there are a lot of other factors you need to take into account before you can really blame climate change. Okay? It'll be clearer as this progresses. Anyway, for the past few decades now, actually the number of meteorological disasters related to climate have been steadily increasing. It's quite scary if you look at the graph. Okay? And it's not just because we have better and better equipment. Okay? So the reality is there. We're going back to basics. Okay? So changes in the global climate system, we have, of course, when we have emission of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emission, we have increased temperature, okay, in the middle atmosphere. As a result, the world is heating up. Actually, majority of the carbon emission is soaked up by what? By the ocean. So a lot of the ocean absorbs the effect of global warming. But apart from that, the atmosphere itself heats up. And as a result, also, we see net decrease in global sea ice extent. You see glaciers are retreating scarily. Decreased polar ice sheets. You see the coverage of ice during the summer in the Arctic is now getting more and more, getting less and less. Okay, we have, I think, these days, Arctic being ice-free during the summer. So, and this will be more and more common in the future. And then, of course, also the temperature of the sea will increase. Okay? The heat content of the ocean increases. And there's another thing that people sometimes mention, but how come then we have more, and how come our rain here in Singapore, for example, gets heavier and heavier? Actually, with the increase of heat, the capacity to hold water vapor in the atmosphere increases. So as a result, when it really rains, it really rains. So what you're seeing is fluctuations, and that it's getting, the range is getting bigger and bigger. So the drought is getting longer, rainfall is getting heavier. But on average, the temperature goes up. Okay? So this is climate change. So have we seen this? Yes, we have seen this. So this is concentration of carbon dioxide unmatched for at least 2 million years. So humans, Homo sapiens have been around for about 1 million years. Okay? So 2 million years. Glacial retreat unmatched for 2,000 years. Last decade warmer than any period for 125,000 years. Sea level rise faster than any prior century for 3,000 years. This is what I mentioned before. Summer Arctic ice coverage is smaller than anything in the last 1,000 years. And then ocean warming faster. And then this last one is also quite scary. Ocean acidification at highest level at the last 26,000 years. Why? Because as we have more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it gets dissolved in the ocean, it acidifies the sea. So the sea gets more and more acidic. Okay? So those are the basic effects of climate change. Here I'm showing you some of the recent study on the consensus, okay? In case some of the audience here think that the science is not sure, etc. Okay? So let me explain. This mainstream science, okay? There are several studies already, review papers that highlight the consensus among the scientific literature. In 2004, the consensus was 100% that human causes global warming. Okay, 97% 2009, 97% 2010. So you can see the figures here. The latest one in 2021, there's a recent study also. That's 99.9%. So this consensus is it's as high or even higher than the consensus that smoking causes cancer. Okay, so it's as mainstream as that. It's as well known as that. There is no more doubt in this area. In fact, I will show you later. We have known this for a long time. Okay, so I will show this later. If you look at the chart of the temperature here, global average temperature, and this is the time since the industrialization. Usually 1850 is usually taken as the starting point of the industrialization. because we have good measurements, etc. Okay? You will see that this is the simulated temperature, okay, where we take into account only solar and volcanic activity. So no human greenhouse gas emission. As you can see, there's no change. Okay? So if we had not been around to make things worse, this would be the natural outcome, normal temperature. But when we simulate human causes the greenhouse gas emissions, we see an increase of temperature that exactly matches the observed increase in temperature. Of course, there are other things that indicate that the global warming is caused by the greenhouse gas emission. There are many other factors. I won't delve into that. But this alone should convince us. This is from the IPCC 2021 report, the latest the sixth assessment report. So this is the latest one. So far, I hope I have already convinced you that it is real. Okay? Number one, it is real. And second, that we are responsible. Okay? But the issue here is, like Pope Francis said, as often occurs in periods of deep crisis, which require bold decisions, we are tempted to think that what is happening is not entirely clear. Things do not look that serious, and the planet could continue as it is for some time. Yeah, of course, the planet can continue for some time, but we won't. Okay? So this is the problem. We have like a inertia to change or to respond properly. So, what are the prognosis on the hot temperature extremes? So this is the chart. This is also from the IPCC report. Okay, this is the summary for policymakers. So they published this part already. If you look at the 10-year event, so what do I mean by 10-year event? It means these are disasters, okay, like for example, hot extreme temperatures that usually occur once every 10 years, okay? If in 1850 we see only once, every 10 years, the likelihood of that occurring with future global warming levels will increase, okay? So we're dealing with statistics here, with probability. So that's why I mentioned in the beginning, it's a bit difficult to pin down, oh yeah, this is because of climate change. No, it's not really exactly, oh yeah, climate change causes this. No, it's because the likelihood of the extreme will keep on increasing. Okay? So this is an example. Even now, at present, actually we're about 1.3 degree warming above the pre-industrial level already. Okay? Now it already occurs 2.8 times the pre-industrialization level. Okay. In the future, at 1.5 degrees, it will occur 4.1 times, so 4 times as likely. So the frequency of a 10-year event will increase by 4 times. This with a 1.5 degrees C increase. With a 4 degrees C increase, it will likely occur 9.4 times. So the number of heat days, for example, will also increase. Okay. Of course, this is for the 10-year event. For the 50-year event, it's also scary. Okay? Now it's once, at 1.5 it will occur 8.6 times, at 4 degree increase we will see 39 times. Okay? So this is hot temperature extremes over land. We have heavy precipitation over land. So you take a look here, okay, not so bad as the 10-year event for hot temperature extremes, but it's still 1.5 times, 1.7 times, 2.7 times. And you see this is the average globally. Okay? You might think, oh yeah, it's only 30% weather. Hold on. This 30% weather is globally on average, but locally, okay, the magnitude can be much higher. And then this is the agricultural and ecological drought in Rhine regions. Okay? Here it's 1 time, pre-industrialization level is once, at 4 degrees it will occur 4.1 times. So, as I mentioned before, the likelihood of extreme events happening increases. That's the gist. So, 1.5 degrees C increase. What's so bad about it? One ice-free summers in the Arctic Ocean every 100 years. Okay? 100% increase in flood risk. So we're already seeing some flood events in the beginning of this slideshow. Already we see declining ocean productivity. Okay? By 2100, and usually policymakers, scientists, we choose 2100 as the date to pick warming by 4 degrees, by 3 degrees, by 2 degrees. We usually pick 2100. So what does it mean? It's a bit scary, you know why? Because it means it can continue to increase beyond 2100. Okay? 70 to 90% loss of the world's coral reef at 1.5 degrees C. 350 million urban residents exposed to severe drought by 2100. Lower economic growth at 2 degrees. So this seems mild. Lower economic growth at 2 degrees and at 1.5 degrees. Yeah, but we must, in Singapore especially, where we are facing slow growth reality, okay, it's even scarier basically. Because we have, without growth in economy, the opportunity in jobs will reduce. So it will impact a lot of people greatly, even in rich countries like Singapore. 1 billion people exposed to severe heat waves every 5 years. So it's a lot of people. It's a huge fraction of the world's total population. And then the biodiversity is a different topic altogether, but I will just touch briefly on this. 6% of insects are lost, 8% of plants, 4% of vertebrates are lost. So this is at 1.5 degree, and we're heading there. Okay? At 2 degree, at 2 degree, before at 1.5, we see previously ice-free summers in the Arctic Ocean every 100 years. This is now every 10 years at 2 degrees. So the difference between 1.5 degree and 2 degree is actually quite huge. It's not just a fraction of a degree. It's actually quite huge in terms of the impact on the planet. 170% increase in flood risk, 99% loss of the world's coral reef. Basically no more coral reefs unless we manage to engineer some coral reefs that are tougher in a more acidic environment. Lower economic growth, yes. 410 million, now 2.7 billion, so this is 1 billion, so it's more than double. Okay? Just by an increase of 0.5 degrees, you double the number of people exposed to severe heat waves every 5 years. And of course, the collapse in biodiversity is huge. We have 18% of insects lost, 16% of plants, 8% of vertebrates. This is a very big issue. So I'll bring Laudato Si here. This is the encyclical from Pope Francis on the environment, actually, a broader one. Once we start to think about the kind of world we are leaving to future generations, we look at things differently. We realize that the world is a gift which we have freely received and must pass on to others. Unfortunately, this doesn't ring in a lot of people's ear. So where are we? So I mentioned before, we're actually heading there. This is the 2100, the year 2100 warming projections. This is historical. Okay? This is the global greenhouse gas emissions per year. Okay? So this is the rate at which we emit carbon dioxide, or the equivalent of carbon dioxide every year. So it keeps on increasing. Okay? And it's a bit sad why it keeps on increasing. I will show you later. It keeps on increasing. If we want to keep at 1.5 degrees C consistent level, we have to reach net zero emission. It means no emission, zero net emission. By 2017, actually in the beginning, 2018, 2017, they say, oh, mid of the century. Apparently now we're pushing back. I mean, you will see this pattern a lot. So where are we now? Actually, we are now already at 1.3 degrees. Okay? So the Paris Agreement that we agreed in 2015 to limit, or ideally at 1.5 degrees C, it's almost there. We're almost reaching it right now. Okay? We need to immediately, drastically lower down the emission by 2017, or even less than, or even faster than that, to reach 1.5 degrees C consistent level of global warming. And yet, in the latest COP, this is, I think, after COP, yeah, this is after COP 26, updated in November 2021. Even with the best pledges and targets that the world leaders have come up with in the last COP, we are at where? 2.1 degrees C. I repeat, the best pledge that the world government is giving during the COP is this one, 2.1 degrees C. Should I remind you what a 2-degree world looks like? It looks like this. And our best pledge, if they are fully fulfilled, is a 2.1. We exceed this already. Okay. And our current policies and actions that are actually being implemented right now is consistent with what? With a 2.5 to 2.9 degrees C. So I think a lot of people on the ground don't know this, but that's why I said in the beginning when I talked to the rest of the staff here who are helping, it's quite bleak. Yeah. I'm going to be upfront. Upfront, it's quite bleak. So the net zero target is actually very important, okay, to reach 1.5 degrees C consistent global warming. And yet, how many parties are actually committing to net zero? This maps the world. 13 parties only. Okay. So only 13 parties responsible for only 10% of global emission agree for a net zero emission. The rest, Singapore doesn't have that, by the way. Singapore didn't give any pledge on net zero. They just said that they will reduce by half in the mid-century. But at least when it comes from Singapore, I actually believe them. Okay, it means you're going to do this. Whereas for the rest of the countries, I'm not sure whether they're going to even fulfill their bargain. So, yeah, so this is the reality. Okay, and of course, no document submitted, 123 parties. So still no document submitted. So a lot of these countries here, they have no document submitted. These are the policy document. The best is in law, okay? This is in law, okay? Of course, Europe, the paradigm of climate change, okay? They have in law, in policy, it's better here. In political pledge, okay, just a promise basically. 26, yeah, but no documents on this 122 parties. Is this the first time we're doing this? No. Actually, this kind of talk has been going on for decades. Okay? Starting with, okay, let's forget about the Stockholm 1972-1. 1992 Earth Summit, Rio de Janeiro, we had the first UN Environment Treaty, non-binding, agreed to reduce greenhouse gas emission to 1990 level. And then we have here in Kyoto, okay, Kyoto Protocol, rich nations agreed to cut emissions to 5.2% below 1990 levels by 2012. Oh, okay, so they pushed back to 2012. Next, the Bali Action Plan in 2007, reaching an accord to extend the Kyoto Protocol after 2012. So they pushed back again. Okay. And then this one talks on this in Copenhagen, 2009, talks on new climate treaty failed, but industrialized countries pledged to be poor nations 100 billion a year from 2020 to help adapt to climate change. You can Google later whether the industrialized countries really have given 100 billion. Okay? You can Google later. And then now, the platform for enhanced action commits all states to reaching a legal accord by 2015 to cut emissions. Okay? So something voluntary national pledges to cut GHG emissions. And this is the one in Paris, 2015, where a universal agreement to cut emissions sufficiently to prevent our temperature rising by more than 2 degrees above pre-industrial level was agreed. Of course, no one actually followed. So we're now in 2021. Okay, only very few countries actually followed. For the 1.5 degree, actually they put another agreement. The ideal is below 1.5 degrees. Nobody actually followed. It is remarkable how weak international response has been. The failure of global summits on the environment makes it plain that our politics are subject to technology and finance. This is from Pope Francis. So after looking at all this at the global level, let's see who actually emits the most. Okay? So this is a chart, and I'm going to start looking into the social injustice aspect here. This is the annual total emission. So this is emission rate per year. Emission rate per year. This EU, all the blue things here. The blue color is EU. Okay, so Europe, United States. Okay, the global south seems a little, okay. China is big now. Asia is also getting bigger. Okay, so this is roughly the distribution of emission. This is in annual emission, right? What about the cumulative emission? So who's actually responsible, if I may say that word? Okay. So we see that these are the countries with the largest cumulative emissions from 1850 to 2021. Of course, number one is United States here, China, Russia, Brazil, Indonesia, Germany, India, United Kingdom, Japan, Canada, Ukraine. Okay, so basically these are all the top countries. This is based on production, so it's the real carbon dioxide emitted. If you take into account consumption or trade, actually the rank order is the same. Okay, so the consumption doesn't really affect much. So basically we can take this as the same rank order regardless of whether you account for the carbon emission by consumption or by production. Because there is a difference. I will show you later what the difference is. And what's interesting is, it's not just the fossil fuel and cement industries here that are being taken into account, but also land. So some countries or people can not emit anything, okay? They don't emit any carbon dioxide, but they just cut down forests. That's equivalent to emitting carbon dioxide. The effect is the same. Why? Because the forests are soaking up carbon dioxide. So if you cut down a tree, basically you're emitting carbon dioxide. Okay? And that's what happens with countries like Brazil. Okay, very famous, right? I'm a bit upset for Brazil. In Indonesia. For Brazil, it's been in the news this year, last year. There's a lot of news, but it's more political. I won't touch on this. For Indonesia, it's the palm oil. I will touch on this briefly. So basically, the amount of deforestation has created emission, okay, a net positive emission that is comparable to industrialized countries like Germany. Okay, now here you look at this list now and you see, okay, Europe is not so bad, right? No. Actually, if you combine all the European countries, it's big. They're one of the top. Okay? So I'm just telling you. So this is the reality. The countries, this is from Pope Francis, okay? The countries which have benefited from a high degree of industrialization at the cost of enormous emissions of greenhouse gases have a greater responsibility for providing a solution to the problems they have caused. Of course, makes sense. You don't need to be a Christian to say this, right? This is the Pope quoting the bishop from Bolivia. And yet, the effect of global warming is not homogeneous across the planet. So here, I want you to pay attention to this graph here. It's mostly here, the tropical areas. Okay? And you see, and the countries in tropical areas are what are sub-Saharan African countries. They're the poor countries. Here similarly also. So here already you can see, wait, there's something wrong here. So the rich developed nations have already emitted a lot, okay? And the ones that are suffering the most in terms of here projected change in suitability for human habitation in 2017, less suitable, outside historical human niche. I repeat, outside historical human niche. So it means they're very hot. Okay? It's this area. This is in AR5, so this is not based on the latest assessment report, this is the previous one. So you can already see. Okay? As a side, I would like to also highlight what this means, okay? Because it's a distribution, right? In the temperature distribution. So the cold, average, and hot. So it shifts. Okay, first the distribution shifts, okay, to the right, gets hotter in general, but the variance also increases. So as a result, you have a lot more hot extremes here. Okay. So this is what I mean. It's probabilistic or statistical. So that's why perhaps people cannot really get it. How come it's not hotter? How come it's so cold yesterday? It's because of this, because it's a distribution. Of course, you can also have very cold weather here. But on average, you will see a shift. And the number of days with very high temperature levels will increase in the future. So that's one aspect, okay? Geographically. We already see some countries that will suffer more than others because of the actions of a few. So that counts for injustice. Another aspect that I would like to highlight is the SIDS, or the small island developing states. So these are the small islands in the Pacific islands, the states in the Pacific Ocean. Some of them have sunk already. I repeat, some of them have sunk already. Okay, so this study in 2016, island areas, so these are 5 islands in the Solomon Islands. 1947, 48,000 kilometers square. 45,000, 38,000, 15,000, 12,000. In 2014, 0 land area. And here, submerged already. Area loss is this much. Overall loss percentage, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%. The rest of the islands also 55, 51, 23, 23. So that's why they were the ones who were actually shouting the most during the COP. They're asking for relief, for help, aid. So this is an example, okay, how it looks like. You look at the paper here. So you have 1947, although it's quite huge. Okay. And then in 1962, it becomes the green one here. Okay, 2002, smaller. 2011, even smaller. The whole island. Hale Island, previously, the whole island is not just this small chunk. It's actually the whole chunk here. Okay. Then now it becomes like this. Okay. It's not now actually, it's in 2016. So this is the reality of the sinking islands. Of course, we are not part of the small island states which are developing. We are a rich, developed state, okay? Although an island state. So this doesn't impact us directly. Another injustice also in the, so that one was heat. We're talking about heat. Then we just talked about the sea level. Now I'm talking about the agriculture and marine fisheries. So scientists have already projected the sensitivity of various countries in these 2 sectors, okay? Agriculture and marine fisheries. I'm sorry, you're seeing a lot of charts, but these charts I think are necessary, and I love charts. Okay? This is the vulnerability of fisheries, so the bluer or the redder the color, the more vulnerable the fisheries are. Okay? And so, as you can see here, most of them are still also in this area. So this is the vulnerability score, okay? And this is the distribution, okay? Latitude here, you can see. Most of them are here, still. So again, these are the Sub-Saharan African countries. Okay, so this will suffer the most, not just in terms of temperature, but also in the effects of the fisheries, agriculture. Their productivity will greatly diminish, some of them below 50%. So this is what's happening. So these countries, these poor countries, poor in the sense that they will suffer the most, are in need actually for help. And we know already, okay? So this is not something new or something very, like something not mainstream. This is already known. Okay? Climate, this is actually just a few days ago, this news. Okay? Climate on track to devastate the world's poorest economies, according to a study. And according to a previous study by Stanford, okay, the economic impact of historical global warming, again, I mentioned it's along this latitude, okay? But also, it's not just in the future. Okay? According to this study, it already happened. the reduction in their GDP is already happening since 1961 is the one that they measured, the period that they measured. So from 1961 to 2010, they managed to calculate the amount of GDP change because of global warming. So we are already impacting these countries in their growth. Here, some of them are at minus 40%, including India. So it could have been, if there had been no global warming, they could have been richer. In the future, the trend is the same. So this is another, so it's not just a future injustice, okay? It's an injustice that we are already creating. So I'm quoting Francis again. Everyday experience and scientific research show that the gravest effect of all effects on the environment are suffered by the poorest. And of course, we are helping make them poorer, according to this study. So now, let's look at another chart. Okay? How rising emission intersect with human development. So what I want to see is, this is the annual carbon dioxide emission per capita. Okay? And this is the level of human development index, United Nations Human Development Index. The higher you go, the more developed the country is. Okay? The more you go to the right, the more emission you have. The developed countries are here, and look, they are generating more annual CO2 emission per capita. Singapore, Korea, USA. These are all sub-Saharan countries here. Low in development index, okay? Low in development index, and low in emission. Basically, they're not doing anything wrong. We're just ramping on them. Slowly, over time, without anybody saying, it's your fault, it's his fault. No one. But everyone is responsible, especially the ones here. Here, especially. Oh, this is Qatar. This is Qatar.
So why are they producing so much emissions, Qatar?
Fossil fuel. Okay. So another aspect of inequality here, 18% of all global carbon footprint come from just 100 cities. So I think at this point I would like to make a distinction between carbon emission per se and carbon footprint. Usually when we say carbon emission, what we mean is I'm burning something that produces carbon dioxide. That's an emission. Okay, it's a direct emission. Carbon footprint is different. I'm not burning anything. I just bought a new iPad. That iPad was produced somewhere else, in China, for example, and that emits carbon dioxide. That's my footprint. So that's a difference. Huh? We can also say it like this. This one is based on production, because usually it's industrial activities that cause the emission. Okay, this is by consumption. When I consume things, the things that I consume are created by activities that emit carbon dioxide somewhere, some time ago. But regardless, the carbon dioxide is there already in the atmosphere. Okay, so that's the difference. So this is based on consumption. There's a paper, so this paper uses consumption pattern data and purchasing power as the main predictor for per capita footprint. So they're projecting, they're calculating, okay, based on this purchasing power, based on the pattern of their consumption, how much is their carbon footprint. So, and this is the chart that they managed to make. If they, we plot it on, that's based on population and carbon footprint here. Okay, Cairo is here, so low footprint because of low consumption, but high population. Singapore is here, low population, high footprint. We're among the richest, by the way. In case everyone is not here, Singapore is one of the richest in the world. You might not believe it, but really we are one of the richest countries in the world. I need to mention this many times because so many people, but I don't feel rich. Yeah, but you're still rich based on purchasing power. Relax, you're still very rich. All of us who work here with a roof, with a CPF, we are at the top 10% in terms of income in the world. Put another way, the world is actually much poorer than we thought. So if the worst offenders are who? This is household consumption related only. Okay? So household, so they exclude the industrial portion, the industrial activity portion. Hong Kong, Abu Dhabi, Singapore. Surprised? Singapore. Of course, in government, in publications in Singapore, they usually don't highlight this. Okay? And I understand also why, because this is per capita. Okay, I understand why the government doesn't publish this, because per capita, because our population is small. So usually the government will publish something like per GDP. Okay, so it looks low, it becomes low, and then the efficiency is high because we reason that we can generate this amount of GDP at such a low carbon emission. So it depends, and here I'm not giving any judgment, okay? But I just want to show that Singapore, based on per capita carbon footprint by household consumption only, are actually 1, 2, 3, 4 worst offender. Okay. This is another study actually. Okay. So this is already known. Richest 10% responsible for almost half of total lifestyle consumption emissions. So the top 10% richest in the world are responsible for 50%. Okay. So you might have already got some hint when you look at the graph earlier when we talk about the countries suffering the most, the ones in Africa. But here it's clear, okay, that really the richest people are actually most responsible. The poorest 50% are responsible for only around 10% of total lifestyle consumption emission. So this is based on our consumption. And this is also related to the economy and all that, so I'm not going to comment much on it because it's also beyond what I can say. Just as the commandment, thou shalt not kill, sets a clear limit in order to safeguard the value of human life. Today we also have to say, thou shalt not, to an economy of exclusion and inequality. So there's something to be said about inequality that creates also such effects. Such an economy kills, literally or slowly, because of the climate change. And not only climate change, but also other factors. So this is in terms of macroeconomy. At the individual level, it's also true. In the US, in China, there are many papers showing this. Okay? This household carbon footprint, so it's household, and household income. These are the poorest, these are the richest, poorest, richest. Okay? Above $150,000 per year. And this is per household, this is per capita. So as your income increases, as our income increases, our emission, our footprint increases. Of course, it makes sense because the things that are produced, service or concrete products, they need energy, okay? And that emits carbon dioxide and other gases, greenhouse gases. Even accounting for per capita, okay, because some households, the richer they are, will have more children, it is still higher per capita if one is richer.
It's mostly mean like the construction of the housing on the ongoing maintenance, so like the air conditioning and heating, stuff like that.
Okay, I'm not sure the exact calculation here, but housing, yes, because cement, the production of cement, it's a heavy emitter of carbon dioxide. So if you own a building, even if you're not doing anything, that is your footprint. It's locked in there. This is the gritty part now, okay? So those are the social injustices caused by, okay, you can say structural or whatever that automatically occurs because we're not sure who's responsible and all that. Well, we can actually pin down some who are really responsible. For example, the fossil fuel companies. Okay, so I've mentioned earlier that consumers basically are responsible. Okay, now I'm saying that not only consumers but producers, especially energy producers, are also responsible. This by Total, okay? Total, in French giant, they downplayed climate trend for decades. Study says it's not only them. It's common. Exxon lobbyists describe effort on the climate. You have to see the video. Okay? What's happening here is Greenpeace basically tricked this guy who is a PR for Exxon, a lobbyist for Exxon. And the lobbyist thought that he was being interviewed. So he explained, oh yeah, we actually downplay the climate threat and all that. You need to see the video, you just Google later. It's quite funny. But of course the CEO, okay, I won't say this thing. Anyway, so on the tape, Megan did this thing. He described working with shadow groups of climate science and detailed effort to weaken President Biden's proposal to burn less oil. So we have this company, another company. In 1988, Shell report, 1988, okay? I was 2 years. Okay? Let me read out because it's not clear. Okay? The most sophisticated geophysical computer models predicted such a doubling of emissions could increase the global mean temperature by 1.3 to 3.3 degrees C. The release of other trace gases, notably chlorofluorocarbon, methane, ozone, and nitrous oxide, which has the same effect, may amplify the warming by predicted factors ranging from 1.5 to 3.5 degrees C. Good, quite accurate. This is 1988. It's not just Shell. Exxon also had such reports, internal reports, confidential reports. They even mentioned the concentration likely about 400 ppm by around this year. They're right. We are now at 420 ppm carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere. So they knew. Okay? Of course, this is not just my observation. Okay? I'm just reporting what's in the public domain. This is not my investigation. I'm just taking what's already available out there. It's a study published already last year. So, Geoffrey Sapren and Naomi Morales managed to look at all the internal publications of ExxonMobil. Okay? Internal publications for internal documents versus peer review. So peer review means academic journals put out by scientists out there, such study results. Non-peer reviewed, so these are publications that are many things, okay? If they're not peer reviewed, they're not academic, or they could be academic or pseudo-academic. And finally, there is advertorial, basically advertisement. Also, what does the blue mean? The blue means they acknowledge it's there, yes. So here in this case, real and human cost, yes. Blue means yes. Okay. So global warming is real and human cost, yes. In the internal document, the shades of gray here, means some reasonable doubt. So which is acceptable. Okay, probably give some reasonable doubt, it's fine. Okay? But nevertheless, they acknowledge it internally. In the peer review, however, so this is outside Exxon, okay, outside ExxonMobil, the scientists in general see there's no reasonable doubt. They just acknowledge it. It's real and human cost. In the non-peer review, you see an increase in the objection. Okay? Oh no, it's not real, it's not human cost. In the advertisement, in the external advertisement, they put out the advertorials here, it's much higher. So you are seeing the difference between the internal position and the external position of the company. Example, editorials, paid editorial style advertisement overwhelmingly expressed doubt about climate change as real and human cost. Whereas peer-reviewed papers and internal reports authored by company employees by and large did not. So you can conclude yourself, okay? This is climate change as real and human cost. This is climate change as serious. It's similar pattern. Um, there are other editorials. Now, a lot of the internal documents are published already, actually, in the public domain. You can see them yourself. Yeah. Of course, Singapore is proud to host one of the largest integrated refineries in the world in Jurong Island, with a carbon tax of only $5 per metric ton. Okay. I'm saying that as a sarcasm. This is a principle of Catholic social teachings now. So I've already shown the grave injustices. Okay. What's happening? Who bears the pain of climate change the most? Who are actually responsible? All of us are responsible, but also some are more responsible because of their more malicious attempt to fight, to lobby, to spread disinformation. Now I'm showing you, okay, what does the Catholic Church teach? We have some, even before Pope Francis, this was already clear. Okay? In fact, it common sense really. Okay? Intergenerational justice. Of course, we must be responsible for the future of our children, right? Preferential option for the poor. Yeah, this is common sense. Yeah, we must help those who are poor. Precautionary principle. I need to explain more about this. So in the past, the normal attitude is, unless we get more certainty in attributing things to man-made climate change, we shouldn't do anything drastic. But now, looking at the state of the affairs and seeing that they're much more serious than we thought, it's the other way around. The burden of proof should not be in, okay, you give more proof that we're going to a catastrophe. No, the burden of proof, we should not do that. That's not the default position. The default position should be, even if there is no certain proof yet, we must already do something. So this is what it means by the precautionary principle, which we must have. And solidarity also. Okay? Plus human, one family, and all that. Okay? This is based on just Catholic social teachings alone. Later I will go deeper. But for now I will give another example of where the Pope in Laudato Si showed why we cannot just rely on a technocratic solution. Okay, so there's a video after this. Technocratic.com. I'm presenting it here because this illustrates the concept that Pope Francis is bringing forth, which is interconnectedness. And I will explain this in more detail. So to illustrate what they mean, what the Pope means by interconnectedness is, I give some examples here, okay, of uncontacted recent news, November 30th. I always show recent news. Why? Because they show that, see, we have a lot this a couple of days ago. Because this count is a lot of it are happening. If I can make a presentation just based on the events of these things happening, we'll do a lot. Okay? So here, uncontacted tribes are invaded and destroyed for beef production. Okay? So there's a demand for beef. Companies are resorting to unlawful or unethical means to get land. In this case, it's quite bad because it's not just deforestation, it's also basically indigenous. So in this case, there are groups of humans directly impacted by this injustice. Okay. Not to mention, of course, the carbon emission from deforestation itself. Next is major fashion brands such as Zara, H&M, Prada tied to Amazon deforestation. Not directly, okay, but because of the supply chain. So they source from companies which are in turn responsible for deforestation. So I think there is something to be said about consuming wisely, caring about the supply chain. In the West, this is gaining traction. Okay, they're now starting to care more about whether your palm oil is sustainable or not. But in Asia in general, we don't care really. The mindset among the people is just not there. It's just too far. Okay? But actually, we are responsible through our consumption. It generates demand. that cannot be neutralized at the company level who source for this. Of course, there are laws, there are CSRs that try to build this up to make a good image. But in the end, we have to know, to be aware that yes, our consumption affects the goods we source in. Not just these things, but also, for example, coffee, chocolate, and there are many, too many. Okay, and not just related to this, but also child labor and all that. Okay, so it's a separate topic. But anyway, this shows that there is indeed interconnectedness between the injustice suffered by people directly and the environmental devastation that these companies or our demand creates. Okay. And Laudato Si, quoting Pope Benedict, said, the external deserts in the world are growing because the internal deserts have become so vast. The consumption pattern is trying to fulfill something that is not there, and we know what is not there. Consumerism is a plague because people try to fill in what is not there, because everyone in the end is true fulfillment. And we know, as people of the faith, that only faith fulfills, only God fulfills our heart, and yet many replace it with passing enjoyment, passing leisure, which are good in themselves, but because they cannot provide lasting fulfillment, they end up getting more and more and more. This is why, in my opinion, and I'm stating my opinion, the monastic life is actually an ideal that that Western Christianity sometimes has forgotten. In the East, it's not so. The monastic ideal of ordering life towards worship, including your work on the soil or some other industries, are also directed towards worship, are a better image of human flourishing than our current lifestyle. It's urban lifestyle, such as in Singapore, where we are geared for consumption. If not because of the demand if not because of our own need, it's because we're pushed to get higher salary and to increase our consumption. Because whenever new products or services are available, which our money can afford, we are immediately drawn towards it. Okay? So this is a responsibility for consumption. It's a bit hard to say for me too, because I like dark chocolate. And I go to McDonald's sometimes and I think, this dark chocolate, I'm not sure whether it's sustainably sourced or not, but I just can't help it, no? Something like that. What can Christianity contribute? So we've come to this point. There's one strong point here, which is a rejection of the technocratic paradigm. So this is something that the Pope mentioned also in his encyclical, Laudato Si. The technocratic paradigm comes actually from the Cartesian mindset of looking at the world as a machine, human as a subject, the world as an object with its own laws that we can tinker with. So the technocratic paradigm is like a scientist, and this subtly actually influences a lot of us, especially scientists, where the subject is sort of separate. No, I'm not part of this. I'm an observer, an external observer, and I can optimize based on the laws that I know. I can tweak, I can change some variables in order to produce the results that I want. So there's an element of control in a technocratic paradigm that tends to be totalizing, because it tends to make us want to produce things according to what we want, as if we're not affected by them. But as the animation just now showed us, actually we are connected. We should not be separate from the world that we are observing or tweaking or whatever we are doing on the world. Humans should not be separate from the environment. So the technocratic paradigm subtly separates the two in concept, in mindset, in attitude, as if we're mere masters and the world are external objects that we can extract, manipulate, and control. The Christian worldview is a bit different. It's quite different. because we realize that we are part of creation with a common destiny towards God. So this is something to say about the technocratic paradigm. And in my opinion, again, there is some who try to propose the solution of, geoengineering, we block the sun. When I heard that, you're blocking the sun, do you realize the impact it will have on everyone? I thought this is a very dangerous solution. So in order to keep on consuming, we just simply need to block the sun. So this is what the animation showed us just now. You're treating the symptom. The root cause actually is in our heart, because we are the one who create these demands and refuse to change, to establish real relationship with the environment, reconciled with the environment, the world around us. Okay. So Christianity can contribute here by rejecting the technocratic paradigm, especially in a godless world, okay, where no narrative whatsoever about the destiny of the world and our relationship with the world. Whereas in our worldview, clearly we are from the dust of the earth, we're created from the dust of the earth, and we are created as two words since the beginning in Genesis. So the relationship is very clear, but not so much out there. This is why some environmental activists would even go so far as to say, our goal is human extinction, for example. Some are explicitly so, especially on the internet. In internet forums, you will say that we should be extinct and all that because we are parasites to the earth. That's because they totally lost our faith, basically. If you don't have a worldview that informs us of the true relationships between nature and humans and our common destiny, this is the result. You don't know what the world is for, because for us, we know the world is in the end for humans to be divinized into God. But they, in their attempt to save the environment, ends up sacrificing humans. So this is one aspect of an extreme environmentalism. So Christianity can contribute here. So in our worldview, an informed worldview that is proper and integrated. Also in proposing an alternative understanding of the quality of life. Okay. What is life truly for? How can we be happy? So all these very basic stuff about faith. So in the end, I would say personally, in my opinion, it's not that people who don't have faith cannot be good. It's just that there is so much that you will lose because you don't have faith. And in the end, you lose everything. And one example I would say is, for example, the deforestation, extraction of resources without any regards for our relationship with the environment. That's one of them. Christianity also contributes by encouraging a prophetic and contemplative lifestyle with proper celebration of rest and also Sunday Eucharist. And I will say more about this. And also giving a chance for what we call, or what the Pope calls, ecological conversion. There are 2 points here. One is it entails gratitude and gratuitousness. So we recognize that the world is God's loving gift. And that we are called quietly to imitate His generosity, self-sacrifice, and good works. All. And then the second is entails a loving awareness that we are not disconnected from the rest of creatures, but join in a splendid universal communion. By virtue of being creatures, simply by being creatures. So there's a lot that the Christianity or Judeo-Christian worldview can inform. And I think right now the technocratic paradigm is really there in a lot of people's mindset. Although, in my opinion, they already integrate the climate issues with a bigger umbrella, which is part of the sustainable development. So it's a good step already in the right direction. I think in the encyclical you will see that there is some section, sacramental sign and celebration of rest. So I already mentioned about celebration of rest. I'll give more detail here. This is a painting, the Blessing of the Week in Artois in France. So what's interesting here is it encapsulates what I've been trying to say with what Christianity can contribute. What are you seeing here? you're seeing your fields of wheat being blessed by procession of the Eucharist. People are kneeling in front of the Eucharist. Okay. And what is interesting is the elements in the Eucharist come from the wheat here. So the wheat that God creates, worked by human hands, accepted by God as a gift offering, are transformed into Himself. It's a microcosm, I would say, divinization of humans and the world, creatures. It illustrates the common destiny of everything to be redeemed in God. So the Eucharist encapsulates all that. Just by looking at this scene, you can see, yeah, this is how everything is supposed to be. So as a result, once you have this attitude, you will see you can appreciate the natural elements that will one day, just like the Eucharist, be consumed or be absorbed into God in a way we don't know now. Okay? So the painting is much larger than this. It's actually much longer. Okay? And then you see a lot of procession along the way. It's much more grand than this. So I'm quoting here, the world which comes forth from God's hand returns to Him in blessed and undivided adoration. In the breath of the Eucharist, creation is projected towards the divinization, towards the holy wedding feast of unification with the Creator Himself. So this is the same schema from Thomas Aquinas already, exitus and reditus. Exiting from God and returning to Him. Everything. Us as creatures, Jesus Christ as a Son who returns to Him after being sent forth. And also creation in the end. Okay. So it is this that is lacking in the world. And even some Christians do not have this awareness. And so the spirituality might be lacking, or the theology behind is not so elaborate as to appreciate what is actually happening. Okay. So this is about the common destiny of creation. In terms of consumption, I would also like to remind you, okay, that this is St. John Chrysostom. Okay? And already in his time, he said, he is not rich who is surrounded by many possessions, but he who does not need many possessions. And he is not poor who possesses nothing, but he who requires many things. We ought to consider this to be the distinction between poverty and wealth. What is true wealth? What is true poverty? But therefore, you see, anyone longing for many things, esteem him of all men the poorest, even though he possesses all manner of wealth. Again, when you see one who does not wish for many things, judge him to be of all men most affluent, even if he possesses nothing. So it's a true attitude towards riches. I think this is very critical, especially in Singapore. Okay? We're tempted to go more and more higher and higher, which is for security, basically, in the 4th century. So it should influence how we look at our patterns of consumption. In Singapore, we have so far some activities in this area. Okay? If you want to go deeper in this theme, okay, I want to explore more, I recommend some. Okay? In Singapore, we just had the Climate Action Conference, okay, that was celebrated. But it's a bit sad because there were only a few speakers. Okay? It's a bit small. But at least it's good that we have actually something, okay, in Singapore. People are starting to be more aware. And I'm grateful that Singapore is not ignoring the Pope's call. Okay? And there's also another movement, is Laudato Si Circle by Andrew Chan. Okay? This is a website you can visit. And he is organizing Laudato Si circles in many parishes. So you can go to visit the website and look yourself if you're interested. Or you can go and get what is called the Laudato Si Action Platform. So the Pope himself actually has already a program for I don't know how many years. So each year there is a specific emphasis on some actions that we need to do. Not individually, but in a group, in different levels. It can be the parish, a community level, or diocese. So it's supposed to be put at different levels in the church. So there is already a program. And actually it's quite heavy to me, to be honest, because it's a lot there. Basically, you need to also be an activist.
when you go in and you look at the questions, okay, the survey to see how engaged you are with this theme, it looks like, wow, it's really okay. I'm nothing. You see what I mean? So yeah, but if you're interested, please explore these options. In the meantime, now I would just like to give some practical advice. Now I'm moving on to some practical advice. Okay, the first is, before we move on to practical advice, I'd like to highlight what is actually more critical. Okay, it's useless to give advice, oh, reduce consumption and this and that, but it actually doesn't matter much. Practically, we're talking about practically. Okay, spiritually, you already know what you need to do. Okay, spiritually, but practically, I think most of the emissions are from energy. Okay. Unfortunately, Singapore, majority is from gas, and 95% is from gas. So there's nothing much we can do. So the biggest factor is the use of electricity for household. Also transport. Okay. Later I will show you more details. But in the world, the energy sector is the largest contributor, and yet majority of the energy source is still in oil, coal, and gas. Okay, they say gas is cleaner, but only cleaner by not even 50% compared to coal. Okay, so it's not really clean from gas. So the only renewables are only a small fraction, although it's building up at a very, very high pace. But it's still very small, and we cannot match the demand of growth in population from renewable installation alone. That's why a lot of people now talk about nuclear. And I myself am indifferent. I don't know whether to support or to reject nuclear as a solution right now. But that's why a lot of people are trying to bet on nuclear fusions, nuclear plants to be able to create zero carbon powered electricity power generation. So you already know about energy. There's also, not for personally, top 10 options for reducing your carbon footprint. Live car free. That's number one. Live car free. Because car free has a lot of emission. If you can buy a hybrid, or if you have electric cars, it's very expensive in Singapore, yes, we know. It's better to have electric cars because you will eliminate basically the emission of one car. So your emission comes only from the electricity that is used for the charging of the car. Also, flights generates a lot of emission. Flights, and I have mentioned this before, renewable electricity. But the rest, like food, actually less really helps. So if you have a vegan diet, you can reduce. Okay. The rest are much more minor than these. Okay. Also, in terms of food, stop eating beef. Okay. Beef has very high impact, not just on carbon emission, but also water consumption. Water consumption of beef. Why? Because they need grass patch, or their feed, either corn or grass, needs, well, mostly corn, needs a lot of water, basically. Lamb, beef, these are some of the highest. Eat chicken. Eat chicken and nuts. Eggs are okay. Okay, so these are some of the.
Chandra, I have no chocolate for you also.
Exactly. So you see this. And then a lot of people say also, okay, I just don't produce children. Right? It saves a lot. In some infographics, you will see, wow, not having children is the number one. Yeah, fine, but let me tell you, okay, the carbon footprint of a family, I think this is in Belgium, the data in Belgium, okay? For a single person, it's this much, okay? 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, 6%. Per capita, the carbon footprint is actually lower. Of course, it makes sense. Why? Because I share my house not just with me alone, but also with my wife, with my children, so they share the carbon footprint. So, in terms of per capita footprint, the bigger your family, actually the more efficient you are. Huh? If you look at it that way. And there's another research also in Japan, okay, similar small families with very frequent driving and materialistic hobbies. I don't know why they put this word here. It's a lot, very high, per capita carbon footprint. But large families with limited material consumption, very small per capita carbon footprint. So it's not necessarily the case that if you're single, oh yeah, I don't emit much carbon. Yeah, but you're not efficient. Yeah. That's the point. Yeah. So I'm still encouraging people to be wise. Okay? I'm just stating the facts here. So if I want to summarize here with some practical recommendations, go JB, better, okay, for the supplies. Get green electricity. I have already surveyed some of the green electricity. Basically, okay, there are only 4 now providers of electricity. These are all with carbon credit, carbon offsets. So they're not truly renewable, but I think that's better than nothing. Basically, they will use your money to buy offset, carbon offset. Okay? The best is Sunseap. They have an option for 100% solar, but it's the more expensive. Okay? So here you see 0.2521 per kilowatt hour. For Sunseap, 100% is 0.29 kilowatt hour. Now you can already see, in order to save the planet, I must fork out more money. Okay? And that's actually the reality why people do not choose to save the planet. Right? It's very, to be practical, this is the reason. Okay? But if you are willing, you can choose this one, or the best one is 0.29 with Sunseap. I'm with Geneco, okay? With this one. I've already mentioned here, reduce things you buy, including houses, because houses also have locked in carbon footprint. Okay? And divest from fossil fuel companies and invest in sustainable companies. The Pope already mentioned to divest from fossil fuel companies. Don't just because the oil price is going down and then you see the oil companies are cheap and you buy them. Please, okay, this is my personal recommendation. Don't do that, okay? Anyway, the oil companies are stuck with some stranded asset one day also. Their value will be 0. Okay? And support this another. So these are all personal. And by the way, all of my presentation has nothing to do with the opinion of Catholic Theology Network. It's all on me. Okay? So support carbon pricing on tax. Especially in Singapore, I think there is room for Singapore. They're already ramping up, like for $150 per metric ton carbon dioxide, but I think it could be more. Why? Because some calculate actually, not some, many scientists already calculated what the price of carbon should be in order to make it profitable for people to actually eliminate carbon. They vary. Some can be as low as 100. Some can be as high as 2,000 or 5,000. So carbon price now is quite cheap in Singapore. Europe is now the highest. I forgot the latest data, perhaps 70 euro or something. And by the way, there's an ETF, investment fund that specializes in carbon. That you can invest in, that's speculating, okay? Actually, Pope Francis already warns, the carbon pricing don't just make it to speculate in the encyclical, okay? But anyway, I still say this because to support a high price of carbon, I think it's still beneficial, even if you're speculating, in my opinion, okay? I myself invest in carbon. So this is some of the things, okay, practically what we can do. So I think I've come to the end of my session. I'd like to promote my organization. Okay. We are Catholic Theology Network. We started by Simon Chong in 2013, so it's been some years already. Expanded to status in 2014. We are permanent association of Christ Faithful in 2019 by the Archbishop of Singapore. So it's not just some fancy logo, okay? It's real. And our spiritual director is Caroline. Father. These are some of the events that we did prior to the pandemic. We did a lot of talks. This is the recent conference we did just a week ago. We did this conference. I'm being Catholic and Singaporean. We got about 160 registrants for this. And with a lot of speakers also. If you're interested, we will have a website where we will put up some of the recordings. And we also will have a program, a formation program. So we realized that there is a need for more robust theological formation. Okay, so we created what's called the A to Z of discipleship. So there will be a topic ranging from A to Z. It's a cycle, 2-year cycle, and it will have a lot of topics. In the end, it's to form. Okay, to form ourselves. It's spiritual formation, but also it can be done anywhere, anytime, individual or in groups, with a lot of solid materials. Solid materials. This is the website, a2z.ctm.sg. We also have a CTM essay competition. Okay? CTM essay competition means you create an essay related to the theme of being Catholic and Singaporean, and you can have a cash prize of $500. Disclaimer, we're not rich, okay? But we give this money because we want to excite the theological reflection study in Singapore to be more informed. This is open until June.
June.
Yeah, until
First June. Go to our Facebook page, you'll find out more. Catholic Theology Network on Facebook. Sorry, we're quite old school, so Facebook is the way.
Next week, we have Crash Landing on You in Theology of the Body. So we do a lot of things, theology related to climate change, theology related to K-pop, okay, K-dramas. Unfortunately, it's fully booked now, okay, no more spots.
But from what we find out from Technocratic Paradigm, you can still walk in. As you can see, even though it's fully booked, this talk was 50%, about 50% of people came, so there's always going to be space. So if you didn't register, if you're still interested to come for that, just come down. Alright? It's basement 1 room 1.
If
Here
you're,
also like the cathedral.
if you're a fan of Hyun Bin, please,
Yes. And if you have not watched Crash Landing on You, please go and watch the very nice show. Netflix.
And then for feedback and mailing list, this is the QR code. If you're interested, you can subscribe to our mailing list. Each time we have an event, we will inform you, we will email you. Okay? I'll leave it here.
Q&A?
Yes, Q&A.
Okay, so we'll open some time for Q&A. If any questions you would like to ask Chandra as presentation, he gave a lot of information, you know, and yeah, please ask, go ahead. I can start the ball rolling. So Chandra, I mean, a lot of the conversations about climate change, I mean, it's the rich countries that are producing and the poor countries that are suffering. I mean, in a certain sense also, for the poor countries to develop, they would have to go into the technologies that will produce also this kind of carbon emissions. So how, I mean, in a sense then, it's going to flip they're not solving the problem, because if we keep saying no, the rich countries will just stay rich and then the poor countries will still stay poor. So what would you recommend, and what are your thoughts on that?
Actually, that's why there have been talks about developing, more sustainable economy. So the growth path should not be the growth path of the developed countries now, with a lot of carbon emission in their history, but a new renewable with a lot of renewables in line. So that's the thing. But I don't know how to get there because I'm not a policymaker. Okay, I'm just surveying all this data. So yeah, there is already people are talking about that. Yeah.
Just a question, because there's a lot of information there, right? Is there a way you can get a summary?
Or I can send the slides to us.
I think the Catholic200SG will upload it somewhere on the website. So this was the video also will be uploaded. So the slides will be uploaded. So
you say the impending disaster, right, is inevitable because rich countries are not just going to one day go like, you know what, stop, maybe it's a good idea. They're not going to do that, but like the world not suddenly just going to go, rich people are just going to go, that's a nice car, I'm not going to buy it. Right? It's not going to be like, oh, Singaporeans suddenly, BTO, no lah, no one lah, you know I will live in a box, sleep on a rooftop. No, so would you personally also have the idea that it's gonna eventually, maybe in next 100 years, you don't know, right? But would you say that inevitably it will eventually get there? Like before the sun go dark or something, before someone find a way to block the sun, however, mankind will eventually just
I don't know. I really don't know.
so
Yeah.
And I think, if you think about it, that's true. But at the same time, change comes from the bottom. and we see a lot of youth bringing climate change action lawsuits against the government, especially in Europe, and they are also taking action. So maybe there is like some form of optimism here as well. Yeah. And it's also driven by consumption of consumer demand. Right? So if you start demanding more renewable cars, electrical cars, like cars that run on hybrid or electricity, then the companies will be compelled to create fancy cars that are also environmentally friendly. So there's all of that has to do with the economy.
Starts with karma then.
Okay, you had a question?
Yeah, I think one of the slides said that the technocratic solution is like not the answer, because I think it comes from the bottom, right? Like when we choose not to consume a lot, then that way we kind of practice like integral ecology. But then at the same time, I think like you cannot totally evade consumption, because certain things also be necessary, like the repairs of houses, which inevitably uses cement, and then like it needs all sorts of energy as well. And some kinds of like recent technology, I think, will try to solve that problem. Like I recently read something about there's a company that is able to produce a way to like manufacture energy off of trees or wood, right? So will you consider that? Because this is, I guess, trying to provide a solution to the on ways of consumption, rather than, I think the example you gave was like trying to block the symptom of what already occurred. Like, is that something that is, I guess, not recommended by a lot of people? I actually never read that, I think also.
Actually, yes. So there are a lot of companies now that are going that direction, and in fact, we should support them also. The IPCC actually managed to produce scenarios, many scenarios, a growth path that actually will lead to zero net emission, will lead to 1.5 degrees C without impacting degrowth of the economy. It exists already. The problem is not technical. Even we're not talking about the technocratic paradigm. We're simply talking about technical solutions. The technical solutions already exist. The IPCC lays out all the paths. It's a lack of political will. Okay? It's not that there is no solution. There is. They already make the projection like what I said. If you check, you Google RCP pathway or SSP pathway, a lot of projections with different scenarios. If this is the emission, with this mix of energy, we will have this. With this mix of consumption, with this population growth, we'll have this. They already did the homework. It's the policy makers who are not committed, and the people below, like us, are not pushing them hard enough. Yeah, it exists. Yeah, thank you for. Yeah, I should have put this in my slide.
Actually, I have a question to ask you. I'm aware that the Catholic Church implements that talk for life. So basically, if you actually the more babies and children, then this would mean that according to your statistics that you have shown, that carbon footprint will decrease, the total carbon footprint will decrease. But then, also I'm aware that there is another side of the climate change debate whereby people are saying that if you have more babies, if you have more children, then actually the carbon emission will increase per children, per child. So how is it possible to because I'm a bit confused by these two conflicting positions, how is it possible to reconcile?
I'm sorry, but we have only 1 minute left, and yeah.
45 already, we promise we can.
Yeah, but we can talk after this.
Right, okay, I guess this is the last question now.
Yeah.
So this question then.
Yeah. So you're not sure because in one of the slides you see we're going down in emission, right?
Right. My question is basically how is it possible to reconcile this debate whereby one side it is one side is not for life, so basically the other they say that we are born babies,
Yeah, I understand.
But the climate change will decrease.
Yeah.
Also, the other side of the debate, there are climate change advocates who say that having more children will be more harmful to the earth.
Okay. Yeah, that's why the IPCC also suggested several population growth scenarios. So my point there was not to show that not having children is effectively the best,
Because who knows, some of these children might become Einstein that will help. I know this is a very anecdotal example, very poor example, okay? But to limit, the problem is not population growth per se. Because a lot of the solutions are already available, even with certain assumed degree of population growth. The problem is who is the biggest delegate in COP26? Who is the biggest delegate? I tell you, the fossil fuel companies. Okay? So the solutions are already there, actually. It's just that it's blocked by so many parties, so many interested parties. Population growth, yeah, of course, if you minimize it, you will reduce the carbon emission. But apart from that, what else is there? Of course, you saw the energy source. Who is going to lose from all this shift to renewables? It's clear. To me, it's very clear.
Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining us this